Sorry, we had a crazy morning before this.
Yeah.
Do you want to, is there a way to get that up and going?
Well, to me, it looks like it is. So, hang on.
Okay, hang on. Hey, it's fine. We're going to tap dance.
Yep, it is now.
Hold on. Let's wait till we get our YouTube viewers on board.
They're on board now.
I don't see it yet. So let's just chat for a second before we...
Gosh darn
Hasn't
it.
come up yet. I was on there and I was like, wait, are we not live on... Hey, YouTube, are you there? I think we are now. All right, guys, we had a... They're saying Brandi's here.
There they are.
Man, oh my
Gosh.
goodness, what a day.
Nobody texted me to tell me
I'm
that.
sure people texted me to tell me that. So we're back up on YouTube now.
Sorry, guys.
We're like 5 minutes into the show. We had a little tech difficulties, but good to see you guys.
We'll post the whole show
We'll
afterwards.
post the whole show. We were just talking about and started the show today with the Bob Ferguson news and the fact that there are 3 Bob Fergusons who are on the ballot to be governor. And so we were just going through the ins and outs of what all happened there. Bob Ferguson held a press conference at 10:30 this morning. So here's the thing. I will be fully transparent. I had a good laugh about this when I saw the news on Friday. Just because I don't like Bob Ferguson and I think he would be very, very bad for the state of Washington. And this is someone who has used the power and influence of his office to, in my estimation, stretch and bend the law to fit his needs, to fit his desires. So it's sort of like, getting his own comeuppance back at him. But then when I came off of that high of thinking it's funny, I started to realize that this is just going to backfire. First of all, I want to be able to look in the mirror in 20 years and believe that I lived my life in a morally consistent way. And the truth is that if this had happened to a Republican candidate or to a candidate I liked, I'd be livid. I would have been livid. If this had happened Friday evening and Democrats filed 2 people named Dave Reichert at the last minute, we would have come in and done a special show on it. We would have held a protest over the weekend in Olympia. That's the truth. I would have been livid about it. And so I have to be morally consistent on it and say this isn't right. You winning by deceiving voters. How much in the last year have we talked about the need and the necessity to stand up for protecting our system? The attacks against signature gatherers and the initiative process that there are laws on the books about. How many times did I call on Democrats, even though they didn't listen, right? Even though they didn't do the right thing, even though they didn't defend our democracy when it was under attack, even though they didn't do the right thing, I want to do the right thing. I think Dave Reichert wants to do the right thing. I can't imagine he knew about this or condoned this. And I think that there are a lot of voters who would prefer a candidate other than Bob Ferguson who don't feel like they have to win by cheating, that they have to win by tricking people. And that's what it is. It's an attempt to deceive Democratic voters who would support Bob Ferguson. It wouldn't be okay if it happened to you and a candidate you liked. And it's not okay, even though I don't like the guy, for it to happen to Bob Ferguson. But there's also a more practical reason why I believe this is a mistake. And I do believe, if they happen to be listening or if Glenn Morgan's listening to the live show today, that they need to pull those names before 5 p.m. There's a more practical reason. And it's really twofold. This is free positive publicity for Bob Ferguson. This paints him as a victim. It makes him a victim. He's going to campaign off it. He's going to fundraise off it. He's going to get a lot of positive media attention because the media is going to look at this as an attack on our election system, as an effort to trick and deceive voters. But there's one more thing that I think a lot of people, and I'm sure Glenn Morgan didn't even think about, knowing how the mainstream media operates. If these 3 names remain on the ballot for the August primary, the media is going to be put in a position where it is essentially going to have to walk voters through the steps on how to vote for the correct Bob Ferguson. Think about that, because they're going to have to talk about this issue all the way up through the August primary. And they're going to have to essentially tell voters, hey, the 13th name on the list or whatever they're going to do to differentiate him, that's the Bob Ferguson for Attorney General. So it's almost like the media is going to be instructing voters on how to elect Bob Ferguson. And if you said, well, that would be bias. Is it though? Because it would be a confusing situation for voters that the media is going to have to walk them through. So if you keep all these Bob Ferguson names on the ballot, you will be asking for nonstop media direction for Democrats on how to vote for the correct Bob Ferguson. And then, God forbid, there are moderate Democrats, persuadable Democrats, and independents who look at this and say, I don't want to support, like, I feel bad for Bob Ferguson. This makes him a victim. This is just politics at its worst. And so now I'm giving him kind of a pity vote. So it's funny, but it's not right. It's not morally correct, and it's going to backfire. So we have about 4 hours. I would encourage anyone who has the ear of the people behind this and of the two Bob Fergusons to pull the names. You had your fun over the weekend, pull the names. Because if Democrats did it, we would lose our ever-loving minds. And if we do not have moral consistency, then we have absolutely nothing. Now, I asked you guys in our daily subscriber poll whether you support this tactic because, I get it. And I was already getting beat up on Twitter this morning for, yeah, but Brandi, Bob Ferguson is a bad guy and he's gone after people and police officers. And so he's just getting a taste of his own medicine. That's fine. I expected a little bit of that for sure. But I asked you guys in our daily subscriber show poll, do you agree with the tactic or not? Daniel says, to be honest, this comes off as petty and desperate. As funny as it is, it also appears to be very illegal, something AG Ferguson will no doubt mention to his base and turn off moderates. Mullet or Reichert need to condemn this tactic and keep focusing on AG Ferguson's hypocrisy and failures today with issues like drugs, homelessness, and crime. Mike H. Says, state law allows for differentiators on the ballot when two people with the same name run for the same office in order to prevent confusion. So the ballot will probably say something like Attorney General Bob Ferguson, which I don't think they can do that, but they could do full middle names or something like that. Mike says, it accomplishes nothing other than look like a cheap trick and try to confuse voters into voting for the wrong Bob, because it is, and could easily turn off someone who normally votes Democrat but might be inclined to vote for Reichert. I wholeheartedly agree with that assessment. Michelle says, as much as I appreciate the creativity, misleading voters in this manner is not right. AG Bob Ferguson should lose because he'll be a horrible governor, not because people couldn't figure out which box to check. Yeah, there's definitely a split, though. It's like 50-50 right now on people who support the tactic and people who oppose the tactic. I just go back to, I know it sounds preachy and Brandi, blah, 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 kumbaya. I always just look at, actions before affiliation. And setting our moral compass and staying the course. And if you judge just the action, do you agree with it, absent the affiliation of the people who are involved and impacted? And I think if you look at that, the answer has to be no, right? Because you would never want it done I don't think they could find another voter named Masapti Semi-Bird. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess there's probably not a duplicate there. Is there another voter named Dave Reichert in the state? Maybe. I don't know. But again, I would be absolutely livid in calling for, Attorney General Bob Ferguson to resign. So I'm not willing to sacrifice moral consistency for the sake of an election. Although, if Bob Ferguson wins, it's the end of our state. I mean, it's going to take us down a path we can't recover from. And I believe that. But I believe for that reason, we can make the case pretty convincingly. And for the first time in a long time, we have a candidate who can actually win. So why would you sacrifice that for the sake of some cheap trick? And really, again, it's not about me feeling bad for Bob Ferguson. It's about me believing that voters should be able to make informed decisions and shouldn't be tricked into voting for someone who they don't want to vote for. Sorry, it's just not right. It's just not right. So we'll have a follow on this tomorrow, and maybe if the Bob Ferguson camp puts out better audio of his press conference this morning, we'll use a little bit of that. It was funny though. He was having, I think it was at Kerry Park. It was at some Outlook Park. It might have been West Seattle. Yeah. But the noise was insane. And they were like, sirens. And I was like, oh, I bet some cops did that on purpose. Like, hey, let's go lights and sirens.
It's like kids
Bob.
Screaming,
my
planes
gosh,
going
it was
by.
So loud.
I thought maybe Glenn arranged it, but then I don't know how he could do the planes going by.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It
maybe.
was bad. But the thing in listening to Bob, and I'll play some clips from him tomorrow. God, I can't listen to him for 4 years or 8 years. I can't do it. Or God forbid, 12 years. I can't do it. I mean, the way that he goes in, lays in on, Dave Reichert hasn't said anything. I thought he was a better man than that. And it's like, you've been attacking and vilifying his character for months. So don't give me this reverse psychology of, I thought he was a better man than that. Like, you haven't treated him like you think he's a better man. And then again, segueing into immediate fundraising. So it's just, it gives him too much too much victim status, and I really dislike it. So I welcome your disagreement on it. I just would challenge anyone to explain to me how it's not incredibly hypocritical and sacrificing your moral clarity and consistency for the sake of a gubernatorial election. All right, coming up next, unDivided, we have spent some time on the campus of the University of Washington in recent days. We spent about 6 hours there Friday, and then I was there yesterday for the pro-Israel rally. So we're going to take you to the front lines. First, I've encouraged you guys to take the First Mark Challenge. Man, if you, maybe your family budget is stretched tight, and you have to have insurance, right? So that's one of those things where if you get your renewal notice, your rates are higher, you might just say, well, it is what it is. This is just what the industry is like right now. But if you don't have a broker like First Mark Insurance on your side, you don't know if you're getting the best rates. You don't know if you're getting the best coverage, or if you're paying for something you don't even need. So I've encouraged you guys to take the First Mark Challenge, firstmarkinsurance.com, firstmarkinsurance.com. What they're going to do is go over your current insurance with you, talk to you about your insurance needs, and then they'll come back with some proposals after they shop the carriers that are at their disposal. Jackie says, I wanted to let you know I did the First Mark Challenge and it was wonderful. My insurance is where it needs to be, and they answered all the questions I had that helped me make the right decisions in my car insurance swap. If anyone is on the fence about trying First Mark, I hope they do it because it's really helpful and they might learn something they weren't aware of. I love it. So firstmarkinsurance.com, firstmarkinsurance.com. The very best part is they work for you, not the insurance company, so you can be confident that they have your back. I had some people on Patreon saying, can you start the show over? Don't worry. I know that if you were relying on YouTube, for some reason the YouTube thing started about 10 minutes into the show, but we'll go back and we'll post the entirety of the show so you don't miss any of it. Struggle fest today. That's all right.
A little bit.
It is
Sorry
Monday
about that.
after all. Okay, so let's talk about what's happening at the University of Washington. Today and tomorrow, we're going to have some exclusive reporting. I have come out of protest covering retirement. So back in 2020, when CHOP happened, a lot happened to my crew at CHOP. We had some really unsafe situations that we were part of. And I'd really, after 10 plus years of covering the far left-wing protests in Seattle, and especially after CHOP, I just realized that I couldn't do it safely anymore. I'd become public enemy number one. And it wasn't just about my safety. Like, I have a high tolerance after covering so many protests for what I'm willing to put myself in. But especially when I was in TV, what I realized is my presence was a security risk and a safety risk to everyone around me, to my security, to a photographer, cameraman, producers. And so I could be willing to put myself in a hairy situation, but I wasn't willing to continue to put other people in that situation, if that made sense. So I basically said, I'm not covering these protests anymore. And I haven't. I had not covered a protest since the day my crew was mobbed at CHOP. So it's been almost 4 years. And with how horrible the news coverage has been of these pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas protests, how dishonest they've been, how surface level they've been, I'm like, I guess y'all are going to force me out of retirement to go back to covering protests to make sure that people are at least given some sort of complete picture about what's happening. So we're going to have, again, some exclusive reporting today and tomorrow, but I want to talk about the rally that happened on Sunday and some observations that we made. So we knew that this could be a hairy situation. So the pastor of Pursuit Northwest, Pastor Russell Johnson, had announced last week that they were going to do a United for Israel march on the campus of the University of Washington. So they put out the flyers online. They were, in there trying to get people to show up. And what they said is that they even put out a route where they were going to start at Red Square at the University of Washington. And it was sort of Christians United for our Jewish friends and for Israel. And they were going to march directly down the middle of the UW quad. Nicole, do you have these side-by-sides of these? They were going to march directly down the middle of the quad at UW, where the encampment of pro-Palestine demonstrators is. And so everybody's like, well, that's not going to go well. And then immediately after that, the Antifa types put out this flyer with the pastor's image all in red and black, calling on the Antifa types to come and defend the liberated zone against, quote, Charlie Kirk's goons, because Charlie Kirk had been there. And so they said, it says the community defended the liberated zone against Charlie Kirk's goons. Who's ready to do it again? So gosh, leading up to that, it was like, this is going to be bad. This is going to be bad. And so I decided to go yesterday. You know, we did have security with us. And also my friend Ari Hoffman was going. I saw Jason Rantz there as well. Jonathan Cho was also there covering what was happening. And so I want to just sort of go through a series of events and point out again some observations that were very troubling to me. So Pastor Russell Johnson started with just a rally at Red Square. Here's a clip.
God is close to our Jewish neighbors. Right. So let us stand on the side of the God who split the Red Sea, cause manna to fall from the sky, cause fire to come from the heavens, cause the heart of Cyrus to be turned, and let us declare, hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one, and he will defend his people. Until every hostage comes home, until Israel's borders are made secure, until Hamas and Hezbollah are vanquished, the church will stand with its Jewish brothers and sisters in the city of Seattle and beyond. Israel is forever!
So it was a pretty well-attended rally there at the University of Washington. I would say several hundred people. They rallied there. They spoke. Ari Hoffman spoke. Some others spoke. And then I talked to the pastor briefly, and he let me know that the University of Washington essentially forced them to change their route, their march, because what the university did is it came in and completely barricaded off the encampment. So the pro-Israel rally was not going to be able to march through the center of it. They could come to the front of it at the barricades, and then they'd have to take a hard left. And for the record, you know, I sort of agree with that choice. But here's the odd thing. And I'm showing people who are watching video of what the barricades looked like. So it was official university barricades. Police for the University of Washington Police Department were positioned in front of them. I have never seen anything like this. I have never seen anything like this, because here's the optics to me. It looked like UW police were acting as the personal security for Antifa. Now, I get the position of the barricades. I get wanting to make sure that these two groups did not interact, because I think the consequences could have been violent, if not deadly. But really what you had is a situation where the university came in. You've got an illegal encampment. You've got people who are clearly Antifa, dressed head to toe in black. They've got their umbrellas. They've got sticks and all these things. They look like they're there for a fight. And then you have 2 layers of security barricades preventing what's going to be a peaceful crowd from coming up to them too close. And then you have police facing the pro-Israel crowd. The optics were terrible. It really looked like here's the University of Washington using its police to be personal security for people who shouldn't even be there in the first place. And for many of them who are violent Antifa agitators. It was really something. And I don't blame police for that. I certainly think that these were the directives that they were given. And again, I think that there's good reason to have put a barricade there and prevented this pro-Israel rally from walking down the middle. Now, I don't think the pro-Israel marchers would have been violent, but I think they would have been subjected to violence. Now, some could say, well, that's their choice to make, certainly. But, it's the job of police to make sure there's not bloodshed on campus, I guess. But it's interesting how all of these efforts are to protect the people in this encampment, and Antifa standing behind police, like now they've got their personal goon squad, just crazy stuff. And it seemed to be like not worrying about, they have a First Amendment right, some of them, the people who are truly just there exercising their First Amendment right to be in the quad. But the pro-Israel people, they have a First Amendment right to march through a public space on a public university that our tax dollars pay for. They have just as much of a right to do that as the people who are hosting this illegal encampment. So terrible optics by the University of Washington. And I'll just play this one clip because there were a couple troubling things that happened. But this just underscores my frustration with sort of the police presence and how things were all set up. So I'm just filming on the front line of this gate, right? And I'd had no prior interaction with this man before it happened. When all of a sudden there's a guy, you'll see him, it's kind of a blurry video because we were live streaming. He is repeatedly, giving me the bird, but then cocking a fake gun, pointing to me, and then pointing to his head and pulling the trigger, as if he's suggesting that I should be shot in the head. And he does it right in front of the police. And as soon as I say something, they act like I'm the problem. Here's the clip. Yeah, and so you notice I said to him, are you telling me you're going to shoot me in the head? And the officer puts his arm out to stop me from getting any closer to him. And one of the officers looks back at me like, don't talk to him. It was sort of, I'm very pro law enforcement and I don't know what they were thinking, but it's like right in front of this police officer, 3 feet away, who's looking at the guy. This guy's telling me either he's going to shoot me in the head or I should shoot myself in the head. And nothing's done, no sort of movement to tell the guy hey, stop that or we're going to take action. And when I try to clarify what's happening, I get the arm. It was the craziest thing to me. And I hadn't been doing anything except just there with my cell phone. But it shows you the kind of agitators that have infiltrated this encampment to the point where this cannot be allowed to continue on a public campus, in a public university. And those are the people who get to hide behind official UW barricades. Those are the people who get to hide behind a line of police. And that is far from the only aggressive sort of violent thing that we encountered. I have some video I'm saving for tomorrow. Just wild stuff. So you had the barricade right there. That was where the pro-Israel people marched up, and they couldn't get any closer than 10 feet. And then they marched on, so there was really no issues there. But then all around the rest of the quad, it was also barricaded. But it wasn't police guarding those UW barricades. It was Antifa. Let's watch this video. So again, we go over to the other side, opposite side of this encampment. And we're met at UW barricades by Antifa, by people flipping us off, screaming at us, yelling at us. One guy was, I swear to God, seconds from jumping over the barricade to try to beat us up. He wanted to beat up my security guard. He challenged us to make him a martyr, which means he was what? Gonna cause violence and kill us or get killed in the name of his cause? So again, you have the university, guys, wrap your mind around this, assisting Antifa in keeping their occupied protest and putting them in charge, essentially, of security and blocking the ability of other individuals, be they students or non-students or taxpayers, from entering what should be a public space. This is genuinely insane stuff. And coming up in Unbelievable, I'm going to have a little bit more on one of the more practical reasons why the University of Washington needs to put an end to what's happening at UW. And I also want to just show you some of the graffiti that we captured while we were there. And look, the UW is a beautiful old campus with beautiful buildings. It was horrible to see all of the graffiti all over the place that the administration has just allowed, but it's violent graffiti. Glory to the martyrs, the graffiti said. Glory to the martyrs. F the IDF, free Palestine. Fascists go home, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. So you have graffiti that's glorifying violence and glorifying murder. Who do you think glory to the martyrs is referring to? Yeah, probably Hamas paragliders, I don't know, who came in and killed innocent Israelis, suicide bombers, terrorists, etc. That's what glory to the martyrs means. So on a public university where you have Jewish students and you've set up a situation where there is graffiti all over everything and some of it is celebrating the murder of Jewish people? And as a university, you have not put an end to that yet? And you're having your police department play personal security to Antifa? It's inexplicable to me. So that's a little bit of what we witnessed. And again, we're going to have some more tomorrow, but coming up in Unbelievable, I want to make a couple arguments free of any sort of ideological arguments. You know, it's not about taking sides in it. Arguments as to why UW really has an obligation to end this encampment. First, we have been telling you guys about Natchez RV Resort over in Sela. So this weekend is the grand opening of Natchez RV Resorts, happening May 18th and 19th, the grand opening of the resort's phase 2. They had their first phase with the lots that went really, really quickly. And so right now they've only got 21 extra large lots that we expect will go quickly as well. So it's important to schedule your reservation for this weekend's grand opening. We spoke with Tig with Natchez RV Resort about the kind of people who are already living out there.
It's an awesome group of people. I can't say better things. It's all very like-minded people. I'm sure a lot of them listen to your show. It's a lot of people still living and working over here in the greater Seattle area that just want that home base to go to, and they want quality. They want to keep it a resort and not just have it be a park. And it's very tough these days with RVers for them to find a place to go, especially a quality spot. This is one they own. They can treat it like a second home, have their big RV sitting over there. If they get off work on a Friday and feel like just shooting over there, they know it's an option. They can also, when they're not using the lot, we have a great rental program where we can put it into the rental pool and they can rent it back out for a weekend to the general public and have them bring some money coming in for them when they're not using it.
Yeah, and this place is like luxury. I mean, they've got all sorts of stuff. Pickleball courts, playground, dog park, miles of recreational trails, swimming pool and hot tub coming soon. They got this massive new 4,300 square foot clubhouse, gourmet kitchen. I mean, the place is amazing. So the phase 2 grand opening weekend is featuring 21 extra large RV lots, complete with water, power, and sewer. Grand opening pricing starting at only $79.9. Reserve now at 800-422-6009 or natchezrvresort.com. So there are some very basic reasons why the University of Washington needs to put an end to the encampment at the Quad. And it is truly unbelievable to me that the university has not seen it yet. Boop. All right, so as I mentioned, Undivided, we had a team at the University of Washington on Friday, and you're going to see some of the clips tomorrow, but we decided to go there Friday during the day. So I think we showed up around 1 p.m. We ended up staying until around 6, and our goal for the day was to try to engage people at the encampment in productive conversations. So what we ended up doing, we had a few people with us. Former State Senator Simon Sefcik, a Republican, was with us. We thought it might be interesting to also engage them in some conversations about, political issues and social issues. And then we had 2 Jewish individuals there, John Michael and a man named David. So David's interesting because he just got back from Israel. He fought with the IDF. And so the whole strategy for the day was to place them in chairs with tables in front of them and a sign. And at one point, David and John Michael, they started off with a sign that said, "I'm Jewish, ask me anything." And then that went pretty well. And they had a lot of really productive conversations. And so we then put a sign in front of David that said, "I, defended Israel with the IDF, ask me anything." And so, we really, we stayed way longer than we intended because we really were having productive, wonderful conversations. 95% of the people there treated us respectfully. We had some, let's call them low IQ individuals who came up and shouted at us, etc. But we had no real issues. What was terrifying to me as someone who makes a living off the First Amendment, as a taxpayer who has every right in the world to move freely around the campus of the University of Washington, what was stunning to me is the extent to which UW has handed access to the Quad over to anonymous people, over to people who may or may not be students. In fact, we even saw some individuals setting up tents who were clearly just homeless, 40, 50, 60-year-old just homeless people who decided, hey, I could just be homeless here for as long as they allow this encampment to continue. There's food and water and all of that. And clearly, we've got the university police keeping us safe here, and they're not going to tell me to move it along. So it was stunning to me the extent to which on a public campus, the university has allowed anonymous people hiding behind masks to dictate access, to dictate security, to dictate the media and to suppress the media, and to dictate the freedom of people to move about as they choose. So I want to give you 2 examples. So we're there 5-6 hours, hardly a problem at all, besides some people who were just shouting at us, which I don't think is an issue. If you want to shout at me, I have, as long as it's not a death threat or something, I really have no issue with that. I have a lot of respect for the First Amendment and other people's First Amendment rights. So other than that, honestly, we're there all day brokering these really great conversations. And as we're packing up to leave, there are still some of the people we brought with us are still engaged in conversations sort of offline, off camera with some of the protesters, and all that's going fine. This young woman dressed in black looked like a makeshift security guard. Turns out they were a security for the encampment, a completely anonymous person who'd, I don't know, been bestowed with security powers by the forces that be at the encampment, came up and started to shadow us around. Here's our interaction. What is your job? You're just the enforcer? We've been really chill and nice and good conversations. I don't know that we need a chaperone. Are you our chaperone? Is there a reason in a public space why you're shadowing us? We don't need a babysitter in a public space. We're good. And you're also hiding your face and won't speak to us? It's super strange.
I'm not here to shadow you.
Then why are you 3 feet away from us?
Why am I 3 feet away from you? Because there is a Palestine protest.
We see that.
You are here with signs talking about the IDF.
You do realize we've been here for 6 hours and had no issues, right?
Absolutely. You do realize that there have been people making sure that escalation doesn't happen. That wasn't just me.
Escalation on whose part?
Really good conversation.
Do you think we've been trying to escalate something?
Because we've had nice conversations and everybody's been super nice to us.
I am not making assertions about who is escalating. I am saying that we are here to make sure that violence doesn't happen.
So who would be perpetrating violence? We've been sitting talking to people all day.
That's great.
Okay, because you coming up on us for no reason when we're getting ready to leave is honestly the antithesis of trying not to agitate. What you're doing is agitating.
Okay, you can leave then.
Well, it's a public space, so we'll leave once our friends are done talking to each other.
Great. You're right.
Yeah, but you do see the hypocrisy there, though, right? Literally just packing up our stuff.
We have been very respectful. We have been very kind. No one here has caused you any trouble, so why are you causing me trouble?
This is the first time I've even filmed anyone who came up to me, because you're the first person to act like this.
Like what?
Because you know exactly what you're doing. You're shadowing us around, and we haven't done anything. In fact, we've had awesome conversations with people who've been at the protest, and you feel like you need to be a security presence with us, and what? Intimidate us into leaving? It's really strange.
I'm standing here.
I'm telling you that following us around when we haven't done anything wrong in a public space.
Have I been following you?
Yes. You've been over here.
Walked up here.
You've been over here looming behind us with your microphone or what speaker, who are you talking to on the other end of that?
It's a walkie-talkie.
Walkie-talkie, thank you. It's been a while since I've been 13. I played with a walkie-talkie.
Do you think it is a
little
little
Does that feel like a generative comment?
Yeah, it does, because you're acting like a security guard when we're in a public space and we don't need security.
We have a safety team because Zionists have been regularly coming and causing, actively assaulting people.
Have you seen us assault anyone or act in any agitating fashion?
No, that's why I haven't engaged with you.
But you shadowing behind us, 3 feet behind us, is engaging with us.
I literally just walked up.
It's been a while now.
I am just here to make sure that everybody is safe.
Yeah, and you can shadow us in a public space. It's weird and creepy, but you can do it if you want.
Again, I'm not shadowing you.
Okay, I'm just telling you it's weird and it creeps me out. But you do you, because it's a public space, just like I don't think they should be able to block people in a public space. We're just saying that you're the first problem we've had today. So that's my piece. And you can walkie-talkie that to whoever needs to hear it. Yeah, it's just a crazy situation. I would ask the University of Washington, have you handed security power over to this group? To this group of people who I know you don't know their names, people who won't give us their names when we ask if they want to do an interview, who don't want their faces on camera, who are hiding their faces. I know the University of Washington doesn't know the names of the people who are trotting around their campus, intimidating individuals, acting as security guards. I know they don't know their names. So to the University of Washington, have you handed campus security over to this group of anonymous protesters? If the answer is no, then why are you allowing it? I can't imagine that you're okay with it. That when a group of citizens is minding its own business, not causing any sort of issues, being very respectful on campus in a public place, and we start to be shadowed 3 feet away by someone dressed in black with their walkie-talkie, faces covered, won't speak to us when I ask, hey, why are you following us? Because if you haven't handed security of the campus over to this group of individuals, then this shouldn't be happening. And you shouldn't allow it to happen. Can you imagine? And again, this isn't the two arguments I'm going to make here. This isn't about ideology. It's not about who's right and wrong. It's not about being pro-Israel or pro-Palestine or whatever it is. The message of it has nothing to do with anything. This is now an issue of campus safety and of campus security. So unless you are telling us that you have handed over the safety and security of the thousands of students under your care to a group of anonymous activists, unless you're going to tell us that, which I don't think you are, then you have an obligation to put an end to this. If we had a situation, I value the First Amendment more than anything. If we had a situation where students were just protesting peacefully, they weren't restricting people's movements, they weren't following people around, they weren't committing criminal acts of vandalism, we wouldn't even be talking about this. We wouldn't even be talking about it. But that's not what's happening. So one is the security issue. Campuses and universities, they want us to pretend, or they want to pretend like they care about student safety, right? Preventing shootings or whatever it is. And you've allowed for an environment where you've handed security and access to a certain area of campus over to anonymous activists. You don't see the potential danger there. You don't see the potential liability there. There's also the issue of the media. As a member of the media, and that being a public campus, I have every right, as do my colleagues in the media, to move about freely, free from fear and intimidation. We have every right in the world. But as soon as we got there on Friday, again, this is middle of the day, we're walking, we're trying to find a place to set up. We haven't started actively trying to interview anyone. And all of a sudden, someone's following us very closely, shouting at us to stop. And we sort of get set up, and then we're moving through the encampment, and people are telling us we need to go to the media tent. Media tent? What media tent? So we filmed an interaction we had as we approached this media tent. We were trying to do some interviews, and people just keep saying we have to come to the media booth. Is there like some sort of permission we need?
Right now?
Yeah.
Can you not record right now? Possible?
Yeah. I mean, is there a protocol for the media?
Yeah.
Since it's a public space, or trying to understand like why people are referring us to a media tent in a public space. So do we need like a pass? Okay.
Your policy is to not have recordings, but it is a public
This
space.
person is just going to explain what the answer to your question.
Okay, so now I can record this
We asked you not to, but I'm not going to fight with you about it.
since it's a public space.
We're walking by with the camera, and she's following us through the bushes in a public space. You were following us through the
around,
bushes.
making sure everybody was safe.
Yeah, and we
I
were
wasn't
at that
following
point
you
just
in
moving with
particular.
our stuff. We didn't even have any like cameras out or anything
Consider
like
there are
that.
a lot of hostile people that enter our space, so we have a team that tries to like keep an eye
A lot of
on
what
like,
people?
hostile people.
Oh, I don't consider us hostile.
I'm not saying that you are. I'm saying we have hostile people that enter
Yeah.
our space, so we have people that are ready to like just keep an eye on that and let our community know when something is happening. So if they are like following you, they're not trying to make you feel unsafe. They're trying to be like, is this a
It
hostile
does. I'm
presence?
just it does for
You
sure.
are behaving in a way that I think it makes sense that we would be concerned.
Yeah, we've been just walking around.
Do you think that automatic recording is a hostile act?
That's
when
the
you're
voice of
recording people's faces like this without asking for consent. Like I do think
Yeah,
that
in a public space at a public university, in sort of the center of the
I think
university.
it's disrespectful to do that.
But is it hostile? Because that was the word you used earlier.
It depends.
It makes sense that it makes people nervous.
Yeah, I would say following people around also makes them a little nervous. So I can respect that. If this makes you nervous, like respect that following us around when we haven't done anything makes us a little
I
nervous
really
too.
apologize that you felt followed. I've been walking around just making sure that everyone is safe.
Yeah.
I wasn't following anyone in particular.
Okay. So again, the question I had after the first clip was, has the University of Washington handed security responsibilities over to an anonymous group? If the answer is no, then the camp needs to be shut down. And the second question I have is, have you handed media responsibilities over to an anonymous group that has been given your authority to stop a free press from moving around on a public campus without being followed, without being stalked, without being harassed, without being told, you can't film here, we don't want you to film here because we're worried about doxing, even though we're sitting in a public place on a public university? If the answer is no, and I happen to know that the University of Washington has a robust media team that responds to and facilitates interviews and questions from the media, if you haven't handed their responsibilities over to a group of anonymous activists, then the camp needs to be shut down. Because that's what they're doing. They're treating it very similar to CHOP, that this is some sort of autonomous zone, that they get to decide who moves around freely. They will follow and stalk members of the media and try to block and prevent a free press from doing its job. It's completely unacceptable in any public space, and particularly, I would argue, on a college campus where the university is clearly falling short of its obligation to keep students safe and to make sure that it is the one responsible for campus security and the safety of students, and it's falling short, if it has any respect whatsoever, for the First Amendment and for the protections of a free press, then it needs to put an end to the encampment for those reasons. No comment on the Israel and Palestine debate, no comment on what's happening in Gaza. It just comes down to those very basic issues. And it's stunning to me, it's unbelievable to me, that the university does not recognize it. And I would end by just saying one thing I've said over and over. How many days do you think a group of right-wing activists painting swastikas on our beautiful old buildings at UW, trying to stop the media from filming, dubbing people security guards to go around and stalk and harass people, how many days do you think a right-wing group of activists would be allowed to camp there, doing exactly what these people are doing? The answer is 0 days. It would have been dealt with immediately, as it should be. But for some reason, because of ideology, you're allowing this to happen, and the university should be ashamed of itself. All right, coming up next, another violent attack on a light rail station, that as our elected leaders are encouraging people more than ever to take public transit. First, I have told you guys about my success on the Eastside Weight Loss Clinic program. I'm down 40 pounds. I've been able to keep it off for a year. I lost most of that in just 2 months. And what I tell people is, look, it's not magic. You do have to stick to the program. And I explain it like this. It's 60 days of really hard work and commitment. And then after 60 days, if you're at your goal weight, for the rest of your life, you're just on a really easy maintenance program where you make some simple lifestyle changes to be a little bit healthier, and you're able to keep off that weight that you lost during that 60-day period of time. There's no prepackaged meals, no counting calories, no strenuous workout routines, none of those experimental, drugs or injections that I don't even think we fully know the side effects of yet. So if this sounds like something you might be able to do, 60 days of really hard work where you can lose, a lot of people lose 20 to 30 pounds in that 2-month period of time, check out Eastside Weight Loss Clinic. Schedule a free consultation with Dr. Ryan Coogan and his team at eastsideweightlossclinic.com. That's eastsideweightlossclinic.com. There has been another brutal murder on a light rail station. This at a time where our elected leaders want us to believe that, public transportation is the ticket, that they want us, Biden was just in town What were we told when Biden was in town? Traffic's going to be a mess, so take public transportation. But they are failing to really acknowledge that there is a serious public safety crisis happening on our public transportation system. This segment is brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. So there's a 30-year-old man who is dead. He was killed in a stabbing at the Capitol Hill light rail station. This happened Saturday afternoon, broad daylight. The Capitol Hill light rail station is a very busy station. If you have not been there before, I have taken light rail from downtown up to Capitol Hill many, many times. Our friend Jonathan Cho got his hands on some images that show, I mean, what a horrifying scene. And yet another gruesome scene of violence on public transportation. So there's not reports yet of any arrests. This is from the SPD blotter. Homicide detectives are investigating after a man died from a stabbing at the Capitol Hill light rail station Saturday evening. At 5:48 p.m., officers responded to a report of a male stabbed at the station. Officers arrived. They located the 37-year-old suffering from multiple stab wounds. Aid was provided at the scene, and the man was transported to Harborview Medical Center in critical condition. Despite life-saving efforts, he succumbed to his injuries. Police are working to determine the circumstances that led up to the assault. Male suspect fled the scene following the stabbing and remains unidentified. Now, I think one of the troubling things to me with the violence on public transit is that so much of what our elected officials have done and our public agencies have done have directly contributed to this crisis and made it worse. I mean, obviously we have the overall crime crisis that is a result on soft on crime policies, on giving people a slap on the wrist. We have a serious issue with repeat offenders who cycle in and out of the system, who are driven sometimes by drug abuse, oftentimes by mental illness, and who, despite being arrested over and over and over, they get no help whatsoever to address the underlying reason why they are committing crimes and sometimes perpetrating acts of violence. I mean, some of the most gruesome incidents that we've seen happened at the hands of someone who is very clearly mentally ill and who had multiple interactions previously with law enforcement. Now, we can't say that's the case here because this individual remains unidentified, but I would be willing to bet money that that is going to be the case because we see this very similar pattern. And then we went through this period of time where, because of these real false concerns over racism, there was just a free-for-all on public transit where it's like, well, we're not going to ask people if they bought a ticket. We can't do that because that might be racist. And this really kind of took hold during the 2020 anti-police movement and the movement for racial justice, where it's like anything where we might believe that there might be some sort of disproportionate outcome, we're just going to totally, scrap it and it'll be a free-for-all on the streets. So it's like, here's law-abiding citizens trying to get from point A to point B, get to work, get to games, go out with friends, whatever it is, and ride this public transportation system, whether it's light rail or a bus, that you keep telling us to ride, that you keep saying, we've got to do this, you got to ride more, we need to make it more of an incentive for people to ride public transportation. Yet you don't care to take any steps to make it safe, and quite the contrary, you take steps to make it more dangerous. And people who are mentally ill and who are drug addicted and who are dealing with, as a result of one of those two things, homelessness. And if they know, well, there's not going to be any sort of fair enforcement, that's when these issues really started to take off in a serious way. And I don't know how anybody can deny that. And then at the same time, you had Democrats in Olympia, and I'm not going to get into a whole gun rights debate as part of this segment, but who wanted to make it illegal. And I think that bill, Nicole, can you look maybe a quick Google search? I do believe that bill passed that restricted the places where you could lawfully carry a firearm. And I don't know if they ended up amending it, but in the early iterations of the bill, one of the places they wanted to prohibit individuals from carrying a firearm or any weapon that they could use for self-defense was on public transportation, both in the stations and outside of stations, like at a bus stop where we know there's so many drive-by shootings that happen. So they were trying to regulate the behavior of what? The only people that regulates the behavior of are law-abiding citizens who know that public transit has been dangerous and deadly, and who want to carry a gun lawfully to protect themselves, because the gang members or the mentally ill drug addicts, that obviously doesn't stop them from carrying knives, from carrying a hatchet. We saw that one incident, from carrying guns. So you're making it hard for us to be safe on public transit and hard for us to even try to defend ourselves from one of these many, many individuals who are repeat offenders, who you're not dealing with in any sort of meaningful way, and who go on public transit and kill people. Sometimes innocent people who they had no interactions with. Did you find that, Nicole?
Yeah, that was Bill 5444, and that did pass.
Yeah. So I'll have to look and see if they included the transit, but I believe they did. So
goes into effect June 6th.
Yeah, this is scary stuff. And even King 5. King 5's headline on this, as critical as I am sometimes of King 5 and what I feel like is not enough attention toward the true public safety crisis that we're in. This is their headline on this. The city has failed him. Man stabbed to death at Capitol Hill Light Rail Station. So they spoke to a witness on King 5, and the witness told them they kept attacking him. He was defending himself, and he got pushed into the rails, and they kept him from getting up by punching him. At least 2 of them were punching him, keeping him on the rails. The man who saw the stabbing unfold said he believes this death could have been prevented. Quote, "The city has failed him," the witness told King 5. They might as well have murdered him themselves. That is a strong statement, and I'm actually stunned that King 5 printed it. So this is what a spokesperson with Sound Transit had to say. They sent King 5 a statement. They said, "The safety of our passengers and staff is Sound Transit's top priority," which then that's sad. If you're telling me it's your top priority, you're very clearly failing. "We take any event that threatens the safety of our passengers and staff very seriously. The stabbing at Capitol Hill Station was horrifying and tragic, and we mourn the loss of this person's life. We also know this alarming and tragic act understandably raises very real safety concerns, even though violence around and on our system is exceedingly rare," and they always have to throw that in. "Passengers and staff want to know that they are safe and when they're riding our trains." And that's the thing, is like, whenever people use numbers that to try to, you look at crime numbers and people are feeling unsafe or being victimized, and you're like, yeah, but the crime numbers aren't that bad. Like, how tone deaf are you? It doesn't matter to the person who is stabbed to death. It doesn't matter to that person's family that attacks on public transit are exceedingly rare. To throw that into your statement is such an insult. And to say at the beginning, again, the safety of our passengers and staff is Sound Transit's top priority. That cannot be true. And again, if it's your top priority, every single person in any position of authority at Sound Transit should lose their job immediately. Because you're in any career, any private sector, anything, if you're failing at your top priority, failing miserably, you would not keep your job. And I go back to not only violent issues. Remember what we were told about King County Metro? And riding on buses that reek of fentanyl smoke and meth smoke that have turned into drug dens? You remember how the University of Washington, they commissioned a study? And UW basically says, we detected meth in 100% of samples, but no evidence that it's dangerous to you. Metro comes out and says, no evidence that breathing in meth smoke and touching the remnants of fentanyl, a drug that can kill you in a dose so small you don't even have to be able to see it with the naked eye. That's not a concern. Just keep riding. Keep riding it, as opposed to any amount of meth and fentanyl on our public transit is unacceptable. It's unacceptable to riders. It's unacceptable to drivers who sit and smoke and sit and breathe the smoke all day long. Rather than say that, they make excuses for it. And they try to gaslight you into believing, yeah, you can ride in a drug den with drug smoke all around you. You can bring your kids. Yeah, ride with your kids down to the game on public transportation filled with meth smoke. And they want to convince us it's not a big deal. So when Sound Transit says safety is our number one priority, our top priority, that is incredibly sad because you are failing. Really crazy stuff. That segment was brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. Make sure you sign up for their newsletter to be notified of opportunities to be able to go out and make a difference in what's happening in this state of ours. All right, we're going to get to some national news coming up. Poor Jerry Seinfeld. Who protested Jerry Seinfeld? Man is a legend. He's an American treasure. Oh, that's right. People who hate Jewish individuals for simply being Jewish, protests Jerry Seinfeld. First, if you guys are thinking about selling your home at any point in 2024, get a head start on the process. You want this to be a stress-free experience. Our friend Wes Jones with sellwithwes.com can help with that. First thing, when you look at selling a home, you're probably going to have to do some sort of cosmetic updates unless it's a very new home, just to make sure it appeals to the most amount of buyers. And that's what Wes and his team at sellwithwes.com specialize in. They can come in, they can help you make those cosmetic updates, manage the projects. They can even pay for it up front. Bryce and Carla, who watch our show, they went to sell their home at Bellevue. They moved to Florida. Very, very jealous. But they definitely needed some cosmetic updates to their home. And they talked to us recently about just how satisfied they were with what Wes and his team were able to accomplish.
Just very detail oriented and never put down our property, because you could hear I-90 from our property and it wasn't the most feng shui, yummy piece of property, and our furniture never showed our house well, our own personal furniture. But he was like, oh yeah, he could see in his mind, this will show after the paint and the staging, this will be a premium property. He could see that. And he didn't let us feel like it was a subpar home the way it was, And others were like, we're gonna have to put a water feature on that deck because that noise. And I'm like, sorry,
Yeah, so the good news is Bryce and Carla were able to sell their home in 7 days over the list price, and now they're just living their best life in Florida. So I feel great for them. If you're interested in selling your home, getting a head start maybe so you can ease into it, list your home at the most advantageous time, perhaps when there's a rate cut, visit sellwithwes.com. Sellwithwes.com. Start by using their home value calculator to see how much your home is worth. It might be worth more than you think. Sellwithwes.com, a better way to sell your home. All right, we'll dip outside of Washington State very, very quickly. So at Duke, there was a walkout in protest of their commencement speaker. And gosh, oh my God, if I have to see one more video of the pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine crowd walking out at any sort of commencement ceremony, can you think, how mad I would be if that was my kid? Do you know how mad I would be if I paid for college for my child, or if I saw my child through the difficult years of high school and was there with all our family and friends at the commencement, and they threw a temper tantrum and walked out or made some scene on stage, which we've seen as well? Can you spank an adult child? Or is that just assault?
Took their little piece of paper back.
Oh my God, 100%. I saw one where some girl gets her diploma and then she rips it in half on stage. I'm like, wow, you look so foolish to me. So Jerry Seinfeld was the keynote speaker for the, do you call it a commencement speaker? Sorry, for the Duke graduation ceremony. So students walk out, which I can only believe the reason is he's Jewish. That's it. That's why they protest at Starbucks. That's why they vandalize Starbucks. Howard Schultz is Jewish. There aren't any Starbucks in Israel. So that's just anti-Semitism. That's just what it is. So here's a clip of Jerry Seinfeld in lieu of that talking about AI and also something these kids will never know anything about, and that's hard work.
What I like is we're smart enough to invent AI, dumb enough to need it, and still so stupid we can't figure out if we did the right thing. Making work easier, this is the problem. So obsessed with getting to the answer, completing the project, producing a result, which are all valid things, but not where the richness of the human experience lies. The only two things you ever need to pay attention to in life are work and love. Things that are self-justified in the experience, and who cares about the result? Stop rushing to what you perceive as some valuable endpoint. Learn to enjoy the expenditure of energy that may or may not be on the correct path.
Yeah, I think those are very good words. It's just interesting to me also that you could have someone like Jerry Seinfeld who comes to speak who, gosh, that's such a good choice for a commencement speaker. Like someone who would be funny, who would be so interesting, excited, who would be a legend, and to throw a little temper tantrum and say, I'm not even going to listen. It's like, well, that sucks for you.
I don't remember who spoke at ours because it was boring. It definitely wasn't Jerry Seinfeld.
Gosh, ours was some astronaut. I don't remember it well, but I remember it was like an astronaut.
Not Buzz.
It wasn't Buzz. Buzz Lightyear or Buzz Aldrin?
Buzz Aldrin. I think he was alive still back then, right? I think he recently passed away.
He was. So ours was like an astronaut or something. Jerry Seinfeld would be an awesome commencement speech. So anyway, it's this mentality. It's this temper tantrum mentality. And also, can I just say, because I left this out earlier, or maybe I'll leave it for questions and comments. I have an observation about these students. I have an observation about the protesters at UW that'll offend them if they're watching, but I clearly don't care very much. Mm-hmm. Do you want to dive into this Fox story quick, or are we way over time?
We're kind of over. We'll save it.
We'll save it for tomorrow. Okay. So on Thursday's show, we talked about this viral video. I won't play the whole thing again, but you've probably seen it. It was all over Fox and stuff. It was of Jared Bernstein. He's Biden's chief economic advisor. And he was being interviewed for a documentary called Follow the Money, where they're talking about this idea of MMT. It's modern monetary theory. So there is this segment that believes that since the U.S. just prints its own money, like, why are we borrowing in a currency that we print? Why can't we just erase our national debt if we can just print our own money? And they think that's the answer, which is insane, but that's what this whole thing is about. So anyway, Jared Bernstein is asked about the core underpinnings of modern monetary theory, and he just freezes. Like, he clearly lacks some basic understanding of sort of how our economy works and of the tenets of MMT. So it's just sort of embarrassing. But anyway, I had asked Zach if he could talk to us a little bit more about MMT, since this clip was being shared so much in the news.
So MMT suggests that rather than using interest rate policy to rein in inflation, you should use tax adjustments up and down. They probably have a point about that. But then they go on to say, this is the way it works. And you go, no. This is the way it works when you're the world reserve currency. Okay. The problem is this will be what gets you from being, or gets you kicked out of being, the world reserve currency. And when you're not the world reserve currency, you're going to have some problems on your hands. It's sort of like the guy that jumps off the 100-foot skyscraper and you ask him in the middle, how are things going? He's halfway down. He goes, so far, so good. Right? Yeah. Now, we all know 50 floors down, he's going to have a rude awakening, but that's kind of that cognitive dissonance in the middle where, everybody's like, hey, it's not bothering us so far.
Yeah. So I appreciate Zach trying to explain MMT in a more coherent way than Biden's own chief economic advisor, who didn't seem to be able to do so. Anyway, if you want someone with a brain to be managing your money and protecting your retirement from risk, I highly recommend doing a free Know Your Risk portfolio review with Zach Abraham and his team. He's the chief investment officer at Bulwark Capital. He's also the host of the Know Your Risk radio podcast and joins us every week on the show on Thursdays. You only get one retirement. Do not expose it to unnecessary risk, especially this year with the global unrest, the looming presidential election, misinformation in the media, etc. So schedule your free risk review now at knowyourriskradio.com. That's knowyourriskradio.com. Investment advisory services offered through Trek Financial LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. Investments involve risk and are not guaranteed. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Okay, getting to some of your questions and your comments today. And again, I'm sorry to folks who were going to YouTube. For some reason, our YouTube live stream started like 10 minutes late. And so we were able to get it up and running. But we'll post the full show for you if you missed the first 5 to 10 minutes or something like that. All right, on Bob Ferguson and this news that came out Friday that conservative watchdog Glenn Morgan had convinced 2 other Bob Fergusons to run for governor as Democrats. Elemental Dino says, I'm worried this is going to actually make people want to vote for Bob because they feel bad for him and having people trying to do this stunt to him. I tend to agree. I mean, I think that's probably a small segment of people, but, moderate Democrats who might have preferred a Mark Mullet, for instance, or independents who have, grown tired of the Republican Party, who feel like this is, and I have no indication at this point, by the way, that the state Republican Party had any sort of knowledge of this or wanted this to be done. I have no knowledge of, in fact, I feel like I can say this. I haven't asked him, but I did. Nicole's like, don't do that. No, I had an exchange with Dave Reichert over the weekend, and he's like, I do not like that at all, for the same reasons that I don't. It's like, he's like, I don't need to win. He doesn't need to win by cheating. He can win without cheating because Bob Ferguson's record is so bad. I don't know if the Reichert can't put out anything with his position on it. I didn't see anything. I don't know that they needed to because it wasn't their stunt, and maybe waiting to see what happens on Monday. But it's like, if he didn't know about it, he didn't do it. So anyway, just ridiculous. Merwin Wren says if Sideshow tries to prosecute, he won't prevail. Filing for candidacy is not a crime. If they don't campaign or fundraise, there is no basis for fraud. Yeah, I don't know, because I read the law and I feel like, what is the preponderance of evidence there? Because one of them, for instance, he, is clearly a Republican, voted in Republican presidential primaries. Not to say you don't have a right to switch your party affiliation, but you have Glenn Morgan, who's admitting, I think, that he's kind of recruited these people and he's their campaign manager. Come on. You know that these aren't two people who really want to run for public office. So I would hate for them to be exposed to the wrath of Bob Ferguson. That's the other thing. You don't think that that man's vindictive enough to try to get his buddies to prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law? And during his press conference earlier, he was asked by a reporter, like, what about Glenn Morgan? Would he be able to be prosecuted criminally for, carrying this out? And Bob Ferguson, it was kind of scary, because Bob Ferguson's like, well, we're going to we'll
take care of him,
like,
or something.
Basically, we'll take care of him, like Tim Eyman style. That's the gist I got, is like, because Bob Ferguson said over and over that he doesn't want these two Bob Fergusons prosecuted. He just wants them to do the right thing. But then when it came to Glenn Morgan, he clearly wants something to happen to Glenn Morgan.
Oh, yeah.
And remember what Bob Ferguson did to Tim Eyman. He made Tim Eyman essentially irrelevant in the initiative space, where he'd been such a big player for so many years. He used millions of dollars in taxpayer money to ruin Tim Eyman's life. So if you don't think that that's going to happen to Glenn Morgan right now, so I look forward. We're trying to reschedule with Glenn, right?
Yes.
And I adore Glenn. I think Glenn is so intelligent. I love a lot of what he does for We the Governed. Again, I thought this was funny, but it needs to end today. And so just because I don't agree with this doesn't mean I don't like Glenn Morgan. People are like, oh, don't say this about Glenn. I'm like, it's not about Glenn. No. It's about what maybe things that hadn't been thought through about the negative impact this could have. And it's also about, again, I said at the beginning of the show, I want to be able to look in a mirror in 20 years and believe and be able to tell myself and my kids that I didn't sacrifice my morals for the sake of politics. And I want that moral consistency intact. And I know a lot of you do as well.
I just don't want to be on Bob's bad list, because
we're on Bob's bad list.
I hear terrible things about it.
Oh yeah, Bob. He has a reputation of being vindictive.
Yeah,
he does.
And Tim Eyman is still dealing with it.
Yes.
It didn't end with, hey, I'm going to bankrupt you and your family, and end your political aspirations or whatever it is. It's still going.
It's bad. Mario Lotmore, our friend with the Linwood Times, the law applies to candidates, not their campaign managers or supporters. I don't know. I don't know if they can do something civilly. Again, I just go back to Bob Ferguson's not going to let this slide. Right. If you know Bob, you know he's not going to let this slide. And Glenn Morgan, I'm sure Glenn's already geared up for it. He's going to get the full wrath of Bob Ferguson. All right, on what's happening at the University of Washington. So let me just say what I'm going to say.
Uh-oh.
There is a difference, and it's very easy to tell, between the people protesting a cause and the people who are there to protest, because they protest everything. It's the same group of people, no matter what it is, all in black. The people who are just there to protest are very low IQ. They're very, very unintelligent.
And misinformed. Like one person I talked to, another security guard who did show his face, but he wanted to be talked to. So I had a little conversation. Very misinformed.
But those, I still think I know who you're talking about, was somebody there protesting a cause, even if he's misinformed about the cause. What I'm differentiating between are people who are there, who really are there because
they want to be a part of something.
They don't like what's happening in Gaza.
Oh,
and then people who are there to protest. The Antifa types, as you saw in our videos and what you experience, are incredibly low IQ. And I kind of feel bad. I do feel bad for some of them. You can tell the low IQ people because they just shout obscenities. They hurl personal insults. They give you the middle finger. They make gestures like, oh, you should be shot in the head. Those people, and I've come to believe this more than anything, they're not some like extra woke, awakened populace that cares a lot about these issues and knows them in and out. They're very low IQ. Because that's what you resort to when you're just not very intelligent, is you resort to name calling, you resort to just threats, you resort to gestures and graffiti. So I'm sure that won't make me any less of a target to them, but I can tell they can't engage you. They use those tactics because they can't actually engage you in dialogue, because they lack the intelligence, both the actual true intelligence and the mental emotional intelligence to do so. And I worry about their futures. I worry about things like where are they going to be in 5 to 10 years? I mean, they'll have no money, no prospects, nothing. And I kind of feel bad for them.
I'll be taking care of them. Are you kidding me?
I guess. I feel bad for the ones who are just a little low IQ and they get caught up in these things, trying to find friends or trying to find a sense of belonging. But you can pick them out in a second. You're flipping me off. You know, commenting on my looks, whatever, low IQ. So it's not even worth really engaging with them.
I mean, while we were there, we saw a child running around. We saw obviously mentally ill people. We saw obviously homeless people that were kind of just jumping on and saying the things that they've heard everybody else say, but they're all kept from speaking because they can't make the argument.
No.
So the people that were actually trying to speak with the people that we were with, they were people just walking by. They weren't the actual protesters because those people don't know how to defend their positions. No. It's these people that are walking by that actually are concerned about the issue that stop and want to discuss it.
Yeah, and they want to talk about it. And I had a lot of good conversations when we were there Friday with people who clearly know a lot about that issue. And so what I want is to give them the credit for that. And not to lump them in with the low IQ Antifa types who make everyone else around them look bad. It's the responsibility, I think, of those protesters who are there for a cause, who aren't committing acts of violence and vandalism, who aren't trying to stop movements, who genuinely care about what's happening in Gaza and the humanitarian issue. It's your responsibility to get the other people out of there, because they're making all of you look stupid, and I don't think all of you are stupid. Okay, more on the University of Washington. Sergeant Pickles says, being really honest, if they did the protest without the graffiti and preventing people from walking through that part of campus, I would care a lot less. I agree. Julie Kennedy's Consulting says, about to start another summer of love. Get ready. Yeah. Lori James, make the protesters pay for their damage. Send the bill to their parents. Yeah. Well, some of them are full-blown adults. I made a comment about one. Ari Hoffman was walking through after the rally, and he had an American flag around his neck, and someone came up from behind, yanked it with force. I was so glad it wasn't tied, and then ran into the encampment and just posted a video of them burning it. And they're talking, and they're muffling their voice to try to disguise it. And I said, that sounds an awful lot like someone who has a single-digit 401k, and that digit is 0. I was like, that's what that sounds like to me.
Absolutely.
Let me see.
Losers.
Mandy says, kind of reminds me of putting the children in a playpen to keep them from hurting themselves or others. Oh, and Todd Welch says Buzz Aldrin is still alive. He's 94. Nicole, why are you killing off Buzz Aldrin?
Sorry.
You said it, and I didn't know any better, so I just sort of went with it. Because I was like, he could be dead. So Nicole sounded very confident in that.
Okay.
Todd Welch says he's 94 years old.
Yeah, that's awesome. Go Buzz.
One other thing that we're going to go Buzz. Maybe there's some sort of special
to infinity and
life, a fountain of youth by going to Mars. You know? I think we have a lot of... What?
To the moon, you mean, right? Yeah.
I said moon.
You said Mars.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there might be on Mars.
Going to the moon.
I haven't been there.
Speaking of low IQ, we have a lot of good stuff on the show for you tomorrow. We're going to bring you some of those conversations that we had, that we brokered between Jewish individuals and some of the people on the UW campus. Some of it was really enlightening. And then, of course, there was some lowbrow taunting that we endured. So we'll have that for you. I also want to talk tomorrow on the show about the issue of the masks and the hiding of the faces of some of these protesters, and what happened when I challenged yesterday some of the protesters to take off their masks and have an actual conversation with me. Let's just say that they did not take that too kindly. So with that, let's get to our closing sanity check. All right, Nicole and I had an amazing, amazing weekend. Thank you to one of our subscribers, Jeff, who took a chance and invited us out there. He runs Clallam County Watchdog, and he's like, hey, will you come out? And also you can stay. We have an Airbnb on our property. And Nicole and I are like, sure. Strange man who we've never met before. We would love to stay in your guest house. And it ended up being, I'm glad we did, it ended up being the funnest weekend. We just love Jeff and his husband. So we had a great time. We were right there on the Strait of Juan de Fuca. And we watched the Northern Lights and they had the irrigation festival out in Sequim, and Nicole and I did everything. We went to watch the loggers, the men cutting wood and stuff, and I was looking for the guy for Nicole. We went to the classic car show, and we went to the parade. And at the parade, we saw the Borderline dance team. So if you're not familiar, the Borderline dance team was recently in national news because they were essentially canceled by the woke activist mob in Seattle that didn't want them to participate at the Emerald City Hoedown if they were going to wear their uniforms, which happened to have the American flag on them. So we were very happy to see that canceled in Seattle did not mean canceled in Sequim. And we got to see the Borderline dance team in action. There they are. Patriotic and Sequim. I love it. So that's your sanity check for today. That has been today's episode of Undivided. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. We appreciate every single one of you. If you have not subscribed to support the show already, please do so. undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com. Just $5 a month. See you back here on the live show tomorrow at noon.